Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, my friends. This is your Steve guide for Tekken 8. Now, as a starter guide, this is going to be a longer video, so everything will be time-stamped, so skip forward to whatever makes sense for you. And first, before we get into it in the nitty-gritty, let's talk Steve, and let's talk Steve's pros and cons. So, out of the gate, the big thing to mention about Steve is a very different kind of character than the rest of the cast. A lot of characters in this game, if you learn a character, you don't necessarily understand every other character, but like you'll have a good understanding of like universal mechanics and like inroads in the character design, all that. Steve, like when you hit a kick button with Steve don't kick. He's a boxer. He has all sorts of various sways and movements from kick, right? That's kind of how that works. Universal mechanics, Steve doesn't work the same way a lot of other characters too. Like down forward 2, that's just a punch for him. Like a lot of other characters, that's like a universal launcher. He doesn't have the universal launcher. Not to say he can't launch people, because he can, but it's not gonna be like everyone else. The 15 frame punish, like this is his 15 frame punish. And, you know, 42 is not nothing for damage, right? But it's hardly, you know, 60 to 80 what everyone else gets. So that's one thing. Like a wall standing 4, you know, like a generic low punish, right? Well, he dodges in the background, right? Like he doesn't do that. Now, flip, he does have an 11 frame wall standing 1. And it has follow-ups as well. So actually, when it comes to like 11 frame crouching punishment, he actually does better than the rest of the cast, right? Because he has options to work with. And he's got multiple options as well. But when you're signing up to play Steve, just keep in mind you're signing up to play a different kind of character than everyone else. Like the normal Tekken logic you can kind of broadly apply to the game and the majority of the cast doesn't apply here. So that said though, what does he have to work with? He has an exceptional counter hit game. Things like back 1, boom, fall like a sack of crap right to the ground, right? And you can go from there. Tekken 8, in comparison to Tekken 7 anyways, counter hit games are generally less strong, but for Steve, it's still one of the highlights. He has a wide variety of ways to hit you with just a basic counter hit, like back 1 is kind of the golden example here. Back 1, boom, full combo. It can be made very safe on block. Effectively, low risk, high reward. So that's good. So he doesn't get, you know, traditional launchers the same way everyone else does. Not to say he doesn't get them, but his launch game is different. So in lieu of that, his counter hit game is quite a bit better than most of the cast. Also, one of the strengths is, of course, these stances. He has all sorts of stances, and we'll cover all of them. Don't worry in the video. And offense can just easily flow from one stance to another. Either, you know, stance into itself, into itself, into itself, into itself forever. Many of the stances have interesting properties, have evasiveness built into them. He has more engaged stances, I guess you can say, like Peekaboo, like the flicker stance, like the new Lionheart Stance, which has all sorts of fun properties. So much of his offense on hit or on block can flow into a stance. So basically with Steve compared to a more normal character, Steve, when a normal character, your quote-unquote turn would end, Steve can kind of just keep rolling the dice and see what happens. Because many of his stances are also very evasive in nature, and the usual just like mashing like a stand 1-2 at him or something like that is not going to stop him. Like say your ducking stance, stuff goes over your head. How about backsway? Backsway, stuff, it's hard to reach you. Also, he technically counts as crouching, right? His general sways side to side. These are just the basic kick buttons, right? It can be difficult to touch him while he's doing a lot of this stuff. And some of the stances here, like Peekaboo, you're allowed to block while you're in Peekaboo. Flicker, you're allowed to block while in Flicker for the most part. We'll talk about it later. Just the act of entering Lionheart manually puts you very far away from the enemy, like much further than a backdash would carry you. So you can kind of use that as a bit of an evasive punish a lot of the times. So there's just a lot of defensive property built into the various stances. Now, on the con side, once again, he has not traditional launchers. So the 15 frame punish, once again, he's got stuff, but like it's not going to be as good as the rest of the cast. His overall punish game is weak because he doesn't have the standard launchers. Steve, due to the fact that he can kind of keep taking turns where other characters can't, thanks to the various stances, is trying to force you to hit buttons so he can hit you with that magic counter hit and go to town on you. The general block, punish, launch, he's not so good at it compared to the rest of the cast. And to be frank, his low game's kind of poopy. His lows, like, you'll use lows, you need lows. This is Tekken, this is the game, this is how it works. You need to use your lows, but compared to a lot of the rest of the cast, his low game is simply less threatening. And the few decent lows he has are extra punishable. Like, you know, he's got some stuff, everyone's got some stuff, but compared to the rest of the cast, his low game is definitely quite a bit weaker. So Steve is certainly a character of extremes. He doesn't play like the rest of the cast. His rule set is very different from the rest of the cast, both for good and for bad. And so when you're playing Steve, you're trying to pick someone very unique. You're not just here to like pick Kazuya or Paul and do the usual Tekken thing, right? You're in for an experience when you pick Steve. Let's put it that way. So that said, now let's talk about Steve's moveset. And let's get into 10 moves you need to know for Steve. Okay, so now let's talk 10 moves you should know about the character. One, we gotta start with this back one. This is the magic button, right? This is where a lot of the parties get started with Steve. So back one, by itself, is very unimpressive. 13 frame startup and does a whole 10 whopping damage. Who cares, right? Well, the thing is, one, on counter hit, you fall like a sack of crap to the ground. So, hey, not that bad damage, right? 75 is pretty respectable, especially on stages like this. It's pretty easy corner carry. So, okay, 13 frames. Quick for what it is, right? And, you know, if it hits regular, advantage on hit as well. What's the downside? Well, normally, technically, it's like super punishable on block -14, right? But that's normally. The thing about this and many moves is you can cancel them into your various stances. So you can cancel this into Flicker Stance, and then on Flicker Stance cancel, it's now -1 on block, which is certainly a dang sight better than -14. I think you would agree, right? Now there is something to know about this. It's a little bit of a bug, I guess. I'm not going to cover it in this section. We'll cover it in its own section after the top 10 moves. Hopefully it'll be patched out in the future. But normally, anyways, you cancel it into Flicker, -1 on block, right? And even if you get that big counter hit, you're going to want to cancel in the Flicker anyways. You're just always going to want to cancel in the Flicker no matter what. So from there, that big counter hit, you do Flicker, and then you can go for your double duck, scoop them off the ground, go from there. It's just basically low risk, high reward for the most part, which is exactly how we like it in fighting games. Okay, so now next, we're going to go a little basic, but basically like everything stand one, right? He's a boxer. This is the jab. You're going to get the world off this. So little things like stand 1-1-2. It's a natural hit and combo. It's a 10 frame punish, right? So 27 damage, not too bad. Not the least of which is you can cancel in the ducking and just keep your pressure going from there. Also, stand 1-1 is hit confirmable. It's a little tight. Not easier like, say, some of the Mishima 1-1s or whatever, but it is still hit confirmable, so you can just kind of go 1-1, and if you see it hit, just hit 2, boom, and get your damage in. 1-1 by itself is also ducking or just otherwise stance cancelable. So if you happen to get blocked, you can use it for pressure, all that fun stuff. And naturally enough goes in like all your various other stances and sways and all that. If you want to go for longer strings, we have 1-2-1-2. Basically, just stand 1 is just really strong all around. You know, he's the boxer, so the boxer punch is pretty good, y'all. I don't got to sell it too much past that. Just do like 1-1s. You see it get hit. You hit 2, get a solid amount of damage, and then go into ducking for more pressure. And if you see like 1-1 get blocked, it's only -3, whatever. And of course, -3 if you only choose it to be, because then you can also go into ducking or whatever you want to do. So the basic jabs are super strong. It's not very flashy, I'll be the first to admit it, but they're super strong and super effective for Steve. And for the people who are very prone to just ducking highs whenever they see him, he also has a couple tools just to keep people honest, like 1 down 1 is a mid, and 1-1 down 1 is also a mid. So if people are just very prone to ducking whenever they see those highs coming, he already has built-in tools to beat it. So now let's talk cortical forward 2. So I talked to you earlier at debating pros and cons that Steve's lows are not great, and they aren't. Okay? They just aren't. The thing about this one specifically is it doesn't really have a power low, but 18 damage low for him is actually very good. And also the move is evasive. He's very low to the ground. It's also +2 on hit, and unlike many other moves like this, it actually does not force him to crouch either. When you go next, you are actually in standing. So it's kind of different than how a lot of these styles of lows work. It's under 20 frames, so it's basically unseeable. It's good damage for what it is, plus frames on hit, leaves you standing, it does not leave you crouching. The one downside, you're turbo dead on block. It is -18 on block, so that kind of sucks. But you got to take some risks with Steve's lows. We'll talk some other lows, but his general options for lows are kind of poor. You're going to get punished no matter what for the most part. So you might as well go for the Gusto, especially for one that does very respectable damage, all things told. And as a nice bonus, this is a move that can shift into stances. So you can shift into your Peekaboo Stance if you keep holding forward after the fact. And Peekaboo is very strong on the mix-ups. Peekaboo low, while not amazing, certainly a low you're going to be using a lot because you have to. So basically, if you nail this, you can kind of keep the guess mid, guess low pressure going for quite some time, because that's the essence of Peekaboo Stance, and this will bring you right into it. So you die if you get blocked, but it's still a move that's very valuable, because Steve needs those lows. Now, we talked quarter circle forward 2, let's talk quarter circle forward 1. So quarter circle forward 1 is actually a pretty beastly move. So first off, as you can see the distance here, this move's got the range, and obviously it's a heat engager as well. And it is indeed a mid. So just from, decent distance away, you can blast someone with a mid, no crouching, and get your heat engager on. So already, just as like a general spacing tool, really good. Now you might have noticed, on block, it says -10. Not so good. Not a big punish, right? Just jab punish. But you don't even got to do that, because this is another move that you can stance transition. You can go into your flicker stance from here, and that just hold back, right? And if you go into flicker stance from here, now it's only -3. So generally speaking, gigantic range mids, hit from this far away. It's also a heat engager. You would think would not be safe on block, right? But no, quarter circle forward 1 is exactly that. It is completely safe on block, huge range mid, heat engager. It's just kind of all upside. It's actually just really good. And he's got like really good moves from range as well. Like he's got Twirl 2, his Spin State 2, which has even more range, although with the Twirl it does have more overall startup. And by the way, this is also a heat engager, right? Mid-range heat engagers, Steve's got a lot, right? Obviously, quarter circle forward 1 is faster overall because you don't got to go into the stance first. But yeah, the mid-range options, from like a linear perspective, Steve's got stuff going on for sure. Now, let's talk up back 2. This guy right here. This is a nasty piece of business. So up back 2 is just a big full circle tracking high. So no sidestepping this, right? And it is also advantage on block. Plus frames. We always love plus frames here. It is indeed a little bit slower, maybe 17 frames, but it's not that slow in the end, really, considering, plus frames and full circle tracking. Here's the deal. This is what makes it so good. It does put you into the Lionheart Stance, but it also lets you not go into the Lionheart Stance. It's a Lionheart, there's some ups and downs, as we'll cover later in the video. So if you want to go in Lionheart, you just let it rock. It'll automatically transition to Lionheart Stance. If you don't want to go in Lionheart, just hold back. And it'll cancel before Lionheart ever goes active. The thing about this, if it connects, and it doesn't need a counter hit, if it connects at all, you have a guaranteed mini combo out of the gate. So if you rock Lionheart, just go into Lionheart 1, and it's a heat engager natural combo. If you cancel out of Lionheart, down forward 1-2, also a natural combo. Obviously not huge damage or anything, right? But this is just a plus on block full circle tracking high, right? So you don't expect launch or damage. And the thing as well here, if you do get blocked, since we are +3, you can go for your various Lionheart options, including the fun things like the guard break. Or once again, you can just cancel it and then go for like, a 1-1 check or something. And, being plus, if they hit buttons, you're going to go right into it. And once again, if you go for a 1-1 and you see a hit, boom, hit confirm in the 1-1-2, easy 27 damage. This is a move that's going to want to make people duck. Like, it's a very solid move overall. And thankfully, Steve's got a lot of good mids. So if people start ducking that stuff, then hey, you're already prepped. This is just a really good workhorse of a move. It does basically everything you need it to do. There's very little downside to it other than the fact, you know, it's like not 10 frames or anything, right? You know, it is 17 frames, which is still isn't that bad, and it's a high. But other than that, if it's your turn and you feel they're not going to press, just go for it. Because if they don't, it's plus frames, it's still your turn. You'll still have a small advantage. And if they do, well then, you know, like, hey, cool. Free damage, right? And once again, counter hit, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're still going to get roughly the same things other than just a little bit more damage. But yeah, just a supremely solid, really good move. Next up, let's talk down forward 1. So a humble mid 13 frame move, right? So 1, just for what it is, actually has pretty alright range compared to like some other similar moves of this style. Not like it's like a turbo long range move, but just compared to the average, just slightly longer than average, right? So the basic natural combo, just down forward 1-2, and it's a mid high, it's safe on block, and that's about all it needs to be. It's a good mid check, just kind of in and of itself, right? What makes it special is there's so many more options. So out of the gate here, we got down forward 1, down forward 1-2, but then we have down forward 1-2-1, where we cancel the 2 into the back 1 hook. And yes, just FYI, it's exactly the same as the regular back 1. So if it hits as a counter hit, if you're matching or whatever, full crumple, full combo, easy peasy. We also have down forward 1-2-2, where the second hit gets canceled into a mid. So if they are prone to duck the high of the second hit, then we'll just give them a good little gut check to keep them honest. And we also have down forward 1-2, forward 1+2. So we'll cancel the second hit into a quick 1-2 combo that's barely negative on block. And also, you know, just solid 20 damage on hit. So we got all sorts of options. We got the basic, which is, you know, what you would expect out of a normal character. We got the fake out into a counter hit combo high. We got the double fake out into a mid if you want to duck. And then we have the fake out of the mid high into a mid high. So just really solid for what it is. Just good pressure. Like, the basic tool is already good. You know, 13 frame mid. What's not to love? Also, down forward 1 by itself is cancelable into your various steps. So if you're looking for like just quick pressure, quick, you know, whatever you want to go for, this is another example of what's really good with the character. So just super solid workhorse of a move, does so much. Next, let's talk Sonic Fang. This is one of the signature moves of the character. So this is 1+2. So by itself, it's a heat engager. Always welcome, always good. And it is also 14 frames startup. So when it comes to like bigger punishes, this is going to be it. Once again, his punish game's not as strong as some other characters, unfortunately. Now, one of the things about this is also one of his best whiff punishes. Like, look at the rough distance here, right? We're roughly at like 3 character lengths away. And you wouldn't think this move would hit from this far away, right? And yo, it absolutely does hit from that far away. The range on this move is absurd. So maybe not so much in the way of traditional like down 4-2 launches or whatever, but if you catch him whiffing any button, just mash on that 1+2, get your almost 30 damage in, heat engager, go from there. So if you need a 14 frame punish, this is the go-to punish. It's a heat engager, always welcome. And as far as just general like whiff punishing goes, 14 frames with that range is pretty wild, especially on heat engager. You can snipe out a lot of people for whiffing even simple buttons. It's really, really good. Okay, next we're going to talk down 2. So down 2 is another low. Steve needs lows. He doesn't got many good ones, but this is a pretty solid one. So down 2 goes into down 2-1. And this is low mid. And now you may notice here, Azusen is blocking. This is nowhere near a natural combo. Furthest thing from it. It is a natural combo on counter hit, and then it'll do a little over 20 damage, so that's alright. But the thing about this is that down 2-1, the second hit is stance cancelable. So there's a couple ways about this. One, it turns that pesky punishable -11 on hit, technically, right, into a more manageable -4, depending on the situation, right? And ducking being ducking, even when you have negative frames, because you're ducking, highs go over your head, you're not as bad off as you would think. especially if we want to go for like double duck into the various moves from there, right? But it also has a follow-up. So down 2, 1, 2. And that is only -2 on block. And that is a high, specifically. And here's the thing. So this is to dissuade mashers. Like, yes, technically, you're always going to be negative kind no matter what. Sucks. But the thing is, if you're doing this, and they're just, okay, it's my turn now, if they're going to duck or whatever, I'm going to, like, go for, like, a mid or whatever. I'm going to keep mashing buttons right after the fact. One, this will connect. And by the way, we always talk about how Steve's a really good counter hit character, right? Boom! Full crumple on hit, on counter hit. And you can go into whatever combo you want. So this is not a power low or anything. This is a quick snipey low. But the idea is they eat the low. The mid's a follow-up, so they can't just start ducking immediately after the fact, right? The mid's a follow-up. And then from here, okay, am I going to duck? And try to like steal turns from here, doing whatever ducking nonsense I can. If you try to call me out, I got a real nasty counter hit coming your way. And if you're passive, screw it. I'll just go for the full string. Only -2. Like -2 is barely any negative at all, right? So there's a lot of possibilities from here. It's not just I do the low, we're done. It's I do the low, and then let's see what happens from here. You know, again, one of Steve's strengths is on hit or on block, you know, the offense can still keep flowing, right? Where's it gonna go? What's gonna happen? Who knows? Because we can do a lot of different things. And this is a really good case example of it. So, quick low snipe. Once again, too, if it does hit, counter hit, it is a natural combo. The first 2 hits anyways. So that's nice. And basically, you tag them low, you force them to block the mid, and then let's start guessing from here, right? So it's a very valuable low in that way, as it enforces his normal game plan on top of just, you know, the quick low itself. Next up, let's talk ducking stance. So that's just forward and 1-year kicks. Ducking stance, forward and 2. This guy right here. Big old hook to the face. So by itself, you know, being based off ducking, it's all right. And you may notice here, also does chip damage. Chip very welcome in this game. And yes, it is indeed safe on block. -7, so, you know, getting a little bit more rough, but still safe, right? So why is this move on the list? Well, one, this is Steve. We're talking counter hits, right? This is a counter hit, you fall like a sack of crap, and it's combo time. And hey, combo time is everyone's favorite time, right? We love our combos here. So, okay, already good, right? So many things go into ducking, and then, you know, surprise, gotcha move, and if it's counter hit, well, bam, fall like a sack of crap combo. Cool, but there's so much more. Not the least of which, the move itself is also cancelable into ducking, right? So, by itself, -7, sure. But if we cancel into ducking, once again, canceling into stances changes your frame data, right? So this move, which is -7 normally, if we cancel ducking again, now becomes +3 on block with chip damage. So now, it's kind of your turn again. What are we going to do? And once again, while we're ducking, we're very low to the ground here. All sorts of highs are going to go over our head and all that kind of stuff. We can do a lot of things, not the least of which is kind of loop the offense until they want to do something about it. And if they don't, that chip builds up awful quick, doesn't it? And of course, it's going into all the generic stances as well, not just ducking itself. It can be side steps, it can be your back sways, whatever you want, just not the advanced stances. So pressure. Basically, you're going to use this move a lot just to do whatever move, go into ducking, and just see what happens, right? If you get that counter hit, hey, awesome, cool. But if you don't, all right, maybe we'll try some different things, right? Because we can do a lot of different things. And not the least of which, when you're doing your double duck stance specifically, you get the perfect version, the blue spark version of the move, which one does a lot more chip damage. Like, it is actually absurd how much chip damage it does. And it's just naturally plus on block. And if you duck and cancel this bad boy, you're super tremendously plus on block. And unlike the regular version, it just splats no matter what. If it hits at all, you don't need a counter hit. You're just naturally going to get the combo out of the gate. So evasive, chip damage, usually plus frames, counter hit launcher, effectively, like, it is one of Steve's best moves. So use it and abuse it. Next up's pretty simple. Run 2. Run 2, everyone who has, a decent running attack, they're always going to like it. And for Steve, hey, it's a heat engager. And it's a mid. So just out of the gate, that makes it super, super good, super, super valuable. And of course, naturally, plus on block, +6. That's a pretty good plus to be. And chip damage as well. So it's basically everything you need to be. Like, I don't know how to sell this besides that, right? Run attacks are usually pretty good. Steve absolutely has one of the better ones. Cut and dry. Once again, heat engager. It's a mid, no ducking it. Plus on block, chip damage on block. Other than the fact, it's a run move, so it has a bit of startup, get to start up the run, all that kind of stuff. What's not to love? Super good, super oppressive move. Okay, so this is just a quick note here. So, flicker stance. Flicker, back 1 in flicker is a very big deal. And as we talked about earlier, it is only -1 on block, but the problem is this, and this might be a bug. You are allowed to block and flicker, but you are not allowed to block right away, it would seem, in this version of the game. So what you have to do, if you want to block, is you have to cancel out of flicker first, which is very counterintuitive, but it is what it is, I guess. Now, next section, we're going to talk about canceling stances, so we're going to go right into it. But just to note real quick here, if you're going for back 1 and you're getting hit when you're holding back, you want to block, right? You have to cancel out of the flicker first before you're allowed to block. If something hits later in the flicker, then you're allowed to block. Because once again, you are allowed to block in flicker, but just not on frame 1 or whatever, like right away, I guess. It's weird like that. On to the next section now. So let's talk about stance canceling. Not you canceling a move into stance, which is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, because like so many things get better. Like, 2-1, +6 on hit, right? 2-1, cancel on the flicker, +14 on hit. So canceling into stances is great, but when you're in the stance and you want to cancel the stance, that's what we're talking about here. And there's a couple ways to do it. The easiest which is hit down back. So we mentioned here flicker stance in the last section, right? So flicker, once you're in it, you see he kind of shakes his arm a little bit, right? So that's this naturally completing the stance. If you don't want to actually complete it, just hit down back, and then you're just back to effectively neutral and control your character in any way you so choose. Much the same, say you're in the Peekaboo Stance. So Peekaboo Stance, you're in it, well, until you're not in it, and one way to cancel out of it, you sit down back, and then you're back to neutral, you're back to normal, you can do whatever you want. Much the same, how about ducking? So ducking, unless you do a move, will complete its animation, unless you hit down back. If you hit down back, then all of a sudden, you can kind of just cancel out of it, right? So a lot of the stances, it is as simple as hitting down back, and you'll cancel out of the stance itself. A good example of why you want to do something like this is just on basic punishes, like 1-1 into ducking. So technically, you're only -2, and yet if I hold back, you can see here, I'm losing, like I'm getting hit. So why is that the case? Because the ducking has to finish the whole animation. So if we cancel the ducking with just hitting down back, and then we hold back, then we get the block. As you can see here now, no fuss, no muss, now we can block, right? So sometimes the numbers are weird on that way with Steve, because Steve has so many weird stances to work with. So once again, just hit down back, you cancel whatever stance you're in for the most part, then you can go back to blocking or doing whatever buttons you want. There's another thing to note as well, say for Peekaboo. So Peekaboo, once again, you can hit down back and exit, but you can also exit it by entering it. So normally to enter it raw, it's forward 3+4, and also you can leave it the same way. So why is this even a thing? Well, there's certain edge case scenarios where this matters. So if you exit Peekaboo through the regular way down back, you're crouching for a split second, right? And therefore, if you mash a button right away, you're gonna get like a while standing version of it. If you exit it through entering the stance again manually, you're just automatically put into standing. No crouch at all. So whatever you mash right away will be the standing version. So it lets you do like, just to show you like a super edge case combo. So Peekaboo forward 2 is a launcher. And what we want to do after that is we're going to manually cancel out of the Peekaboo Stance, so hitting 4-3+4, and then we're going to go for Sonic Fang. And because we're standing and not getting up from crouching, this lets it become a natural combo. Not the easiest combo, not gonna lie to you, right? But it just gives you some damage potential you might otherwise not get. Because once again, if you cancel out through down back, that, like, you know, initial frame you're going to count as crouching, and Sonic Fang doesn't work from crouching the same way from standing, right? So just telling you so you know. And of course, many stances also, like say flicker if you enter it manually, you can just cancel into like back sway, forward ducking, whatever. Like many stances can also be canceled in other stances because that's the nature of Steve. Now let's talk about heat mode, and then we'll talk about more stance stuff. So heat mode and Steve, what does Steve get? So one of the things, before we even get to what he gets, he's got some of the best heat engagers in the game. Cortical forward 1, so good. He's got run 2, spin 2, like, he's got really good heat engagers. He will get you straight up. Now, once he's in heat, here's the thing. So he gets an advanced duck state. So normally, you know, forward one of your kicks, right, puts you in ducking. Hit down forward in both kicks. He gets a quick duck that does use heat. And what this does is it basically gives you the double duck state immediately. So all the things you get from it, the big blue spark moves that are really fancy, very powerful, you get them on demand versus like the tell of you manually doing the double duck, right? So that's really good, really cool. Like having the double duck version of forward 2 on demand, really good, right? Really, really good. But what makes this extra scary, either from double ducking or from the actual, like, you know, heat stance itself, it turns him into effectively a grappler. He'll clinch you, and the clinch itself is not techable. So you just got to take it, and then it's simply guess. From this clinch, if he hits 1, it'll be a couple quick body punches and leaves the opponent standing at plus 14 for you. And if you do anything 14 frames or faster, it becomes a natural combo. So say like Sonic Fang, all combos by itself. And hey, specifically Sonic Fang, if you have heat left over, Sonic Fang is a heat engager, so you can heat dash cancel. So you can just sneak in some extra damage, some extra hits, right? So that won't come up too much because you'll probably be out of heat by that point, but hey, it's an option. And from clinch 2, just basically a big old wallop and you get 50 damage, right? There is no visual tell at all. You simply have to guess. A 1 break or a 2 break. So you do have a 50-50 chance of being right? But it's like King in that you can't visually tell anything. You just got to guess how it's going to be. So while the bar is running, and admittedly it won't be running too long, right? That's the nature of the game. But while the bar is running, Steve is a grappler for a day. So that is pretty cool. Also, while in heat specifically, when you're in Lionheart Stance becomes a natural mid counter. So if they hit you with a mid, they'll bop them and then force the clinch state immediately. So then basically, once again, guess 1 break or 2 break, and hopefully you guess right, because if you guess wrong, you're eating a lot of damage, a lot more damage, because the Lionheart counter does the initial hit as well, so you're getting more additional damage as well. So it's not going to come up too often, but once again, really good. But yeah, Steve just has, like, Steve going into a heat engager, it's going to happen. He's got so many good heat engagers. And then from there, all the usual stuff, especially like, you know, jab pressure, he's going to get a lot of chip damage in. Also, to note, his heat smash visually looks cool on hit. Big old slam down. On block specifically, lots of chip damage, and also forces you into the Lionheart state at +8, which can have some issues. It's actually not as good as you think, but we'll cover that later in the Lionheart sections. But still, that's heat mode and Steve. Now, let's talk some of the stances. Steve's got a lot of stances. These ones we'll talk first are the more generic stances, for lack of a more elegant term. These are the ones where you can do it off like a basic 1-1 or so many other strings. So these are forward and kick, which is ducking. Either kick and just hit the button by itself. So left kick will be ducking left. Right kick will be ducking to your right. And back and either kick, and this is your back sway stance. These are the generic stances that you can combo off of just many different strings. Just kind of go into it from whatever. So just to quickly run you through these guys, just so you know what these are capable of. Your ducking is sort of the main event of the generic stances. because highs will go over your head. You count as crouching, and you obviously get some very strong moves, not the least of which is ducking forward 2, which had its own section in the top 10 moves section, right? So I'm not going to relitigate that one, but we have ducking 1, which is a mid, and will force people to crumple even on regular hit. Ducking 2 is a proper full launcher. It is 19 frames, and you have to duck first. So once again, you know, we talked about this in the beginning of the video. Steve's launches, while existing, you know, they exist. They're not great, but still the option is there. Also, during ducking, if you mash 1+2, these are the machine gun blows. So these are generally going to be a combo ender, especially against the wall, because one of the beauties here, as far as like combos go, is multi-hitting, right? Even if there's you know, the worst possible scaling, all that kind of stuff, each hit will always do at least 1 damage. So you'll add a decent amount of damage to any combo, and if you do get, you know, the more favorable, you know, grounded combo, all the better yet. Now, ducking left and right, the main advantage of these, obviously, is their evasiveness. Just like a step, you can kind of get out of the way of stuff. And because you keep a somewhat lower profile, you might be able to dodge a few things that a regular just sidestep cannot. So there is some shared moves here. They're a little bit mirrored. So say you duck left 2, that's the shoulder. And if you duck right and hit 1, that's the shoulder. So kind of the same move, just depending on which angle you're going for. But also, both stances have unique moves as well. Like ducking right 2, just a big old mid blast. And that is unique to ducking right. You cannot do that from ducking left. Ducking left has stuff like 1-1, where it's double hitting mid. So different moves. Somewhat similar as well is either duck 1-2. From ducking right is shoulder into a big hook. From left, it's a gut punch into a big hook, but it's a big hook nevertheless. And it's a full circle tracking move. It's effectively much the same as like just up back 2, right? Full circle tracking plus on block hits high and forces the Lionheart Stance. So if you're ever just doing like, you know, basic pressure, you can cancel into this and always force those plus frames if you're trying to go for it and you expect them to be passive. Although, keep in mind, unlike regular up back 2, you cannot cancel out of the Lionheart Stance. So even though you'll have those plus frames, you're committed to the stance, which might not always be a great thing, as we'll cover later. I know I keep hinting at it, but we'll get there. Also, for both ducking left and right, you can cancel the 1-2 into 1-2-1, and you'll fake out the big high and just go for a mid instead. So you do get multiple options. Unique to ducking left specifically is duck left 1 forward 1-1, and this is a string that'll hit mid high, and if it's blocked, then it's also +3 on block. So just kind of really handy. So keep that one in mind, but it's unique only for ducking left specifically. And for back sway, he physically moves back, and he also counts as crouching, not standing. So effectively, highs will kind of always just whiff over him while he's doing this. Also, we get 3 moves out of here. So back sway 1, overhead, well, swinging overhead, not an overhead. It's not Street Fighter, but it is a mid hit, and very good. Like by itself as a single hit, 26 damage. That's a lot for a single hit. And if it connects, forces crouch +14, by the way. And it will indeed let you natural combo into down forward 1 or into Sonic Fang if you want the heat engager. So you actually get like a lot out of here. And if it happens to be blocked, like the consequences are so low. Like it forces crouch on the enemy with chip. Depending on where it hits, it's usually -1. Sometimes it can be 0, depending on how it hits on the active frames. But like, just very solid. Very, very solid. Backsway 2, this is the moneymaker. So if you call them out, you know you're going to be backswinging like through whatever moves coming your way, like be it a high or whatever. This is just a natural crumple. No counter hit needed, nothing like that. You get them, and they're gone. But you may notice here, the hitbox is not great on it, right? So generally, they have to be attacking into you to extend their hurt box out for you to catch them. But if you do catch them, then full crumple, do whatever you want combo-wise. You'll very assuredly get it. And backsway 1+2 is a non-damaging throw. What it does is it lets you reposition the enemy in any direction you so choose. Hold up, you put them into the background, or you can hold back, and whatever. Like any of the directions you want to hold, you'll just throw them there in that direction. So it's still techable. It doesn't do damage. It's purely a repositioning thing, but it's there. Like, you know, it's there. That's really all I can say. Like, it's better than having no other option. It won't be a big deal, but if you ever need that repositioning desperately and you avoided something, then you'll have it. Next stance to mention is the spin stance, sometimes known as the albatross. So it's just 3 and 4 together. And, well, you spin. Its main use is going to be spin 2 in neutral, because spin 2 has got some range to it, as you can see here, right? And many flicker stance combos, all that kind of stuff. You can cancel many flicker combos into spin, albatross, and just go for there. So you're going to see that a lot in combos too as well. So spin 2 is the big boy, mid, heat engager. Spin down 2 is a spinning low, a little slower, but you know, you can still catch people, right? And while you're spinning, you can hold up or down and spin in various directions and then go for, you know, various attacks out of it as well. When you do double spins, your attacks will come out of your 1 buttons instead of your 2 buttons, but otherwise kind of effectively the same. Although, stuff like the low, if you do some more fancier spins, the low becomes quite a bit faster. And the double spin low is -12, so it's still technically punishable, but you're realistically only going to get hit by like a wall standing 4. So this one, if they let you just kind of spin all over them, that's actually not a bad low to go for. They got to be conditioned, I guess, but it's an option. It's an option. And you can also spin holding forward and go just directly into Peekaboo Stance, which we'll talk about in a moment. So yeah, it's not the most complex stance or anything, but it's there, and you got to take advantage of all the tools you got. Now, let's talk about Flicker Stance. So while he's in Flicker, he'll kind of move his arm side to side a bit, and there's a million ways to cancel into it. And to be frank, the best thing about the stance is canceling into it from other moves, because it makes your frame data much better, less so the actual stance itself. But that said, you know, hey, we got stuff to work with, right? So out of the gate here, one of the things about Flicker is just, you got some incredible jabs out of Flicker, right? Just mash on that 1 button and you get all sorts of stuff. And then you have various options from there, because these moves are all highs. So while you're doing that, if you want to say hit forward 1, then that'll become a mid. No, stop people from blocking. We don't want those pesky blocks. So just hit forward 1. Much the same here. The mash is a little bit negative, right, on block. So if you hit up or down and then hit 1 while you're doing this, and this can be at any point really, you'll just get a quick hook that's a high, and that'll be 0 on block. Or conversely, hey, Steve's Steve, right? We got those counter hits. If that counter hits, that'll send you flying. And while we're doing this, you can kind of heavily delay this move. Like, you do not have to commit to it right away. It's not like forever, but it's enough that people might be comfortable in trying to hit a button back, right? And you catch them with that counter hit, send them flying. Flicker 2, unlike the Flicker 1s, which are all, you know, at least they start high, right? Flicker 2 is just a big mid out of the gate. Sends the opponent on their way. Splats, no need for a counter hit. And on block, it is a little negative, but it also forces crouch and does do chip damage. So if it gets blocked, you're not going to feel too bad about it. He does have a throw out of Flicker. This is a 1-2 break specifically. You may recognize this as the traditional boxing exploder suplex, which all the greats do, like, you know, Mayweather, Roy Jones Jr. You've seen this a million times in their matches. And our last big thing out of Flicker is back 2. So back 2 is a power crush attack. And this is really good for Steve. So many moves, like, you know, say like back 1 can put you into Flicker, right? And maybe you're just a little negative. Maybe they're enticed to hit that button. And this is a pretty quick power crush move here, and just valuable for what it is. Not the least of which, it forces a state where their feet are up on the ground while their back's on the ground, right? So you just get natural combos. Like, you can do whatever you want, really. So the actual hit itself is much more deadly because you get the follow-up after the fact. And for what it is, 14 frame startup on a power crush move, granted you have to enter the stance first, is actually very fast. And beauty of beauties, safe on block. So it's kind of just toss it out and see what happens. Because you can't get punished for it. The only punish is the duck. It is a high, so you can duck it, right? But if it's blocked, it's only -9. It creates a lot of space between the two characters, of which usually any kind of 10 framer will whiff. So if you want to create some backspace or whatever, go for it. Like, it's actually very good. So Flicker, 9 times out of 10, you're canceling into it to make whatever move you just did before have much better frame advantage, one way or another. But it's got some stuff in it. Now let's talk Peekaboo Stance. So Peekaboo, just out of the gate. He does crouch a bit lower, but he does count as standing, so you can still hit him with highs and everything. But he's freely allowed to block. So just hold back and you can block whatever, just like any normal neutral state. So this is kind of like the mix-up stance, if anything. So you have your quick down, one low. 15 frame startup, no one's reacting to this, right? It's a slightly advantage on hit. And this is kind of the harassment that makes everything else go. Because it doesn't do a lot, but like, since you can kind of just bully with it, people are going to eventually block low. And then we got a heck of a lot of good mids to work with. So stuff like forward 2. So this is one of his rare launchers, right? Forward 2 also technically punishable, -13, but you can see the amount of spacing created between the characters, right? So, well, it's certainly punishable depending on the character. Some characters might struggle a bit more than others. So, it's somewhat difficult to punish launch. So that's always handy. And hey, speaking of Peekaboo mid launchers, we have down forward 2. So down forward 2 doesn't quite have the same range, but if you are close, it's a launch. That's good. And this bad boy is -10. So the most they're going to get off this is a jab punish. So for a proper just launcher, and this is one of the rare opportunities to get, you know, big damage, right? I think that's a fair trade-off. Actually, and just to round off the launchers, he has a third launcher from Peekaboo, up forward 2. So this is like the Omega big boy launcher. He's basically doing a Shoryuken straight up, launching the enemy. Now this one, -15, you're getting launch if it's blocked, right? So only do it if you believe in it. But yeah, so a lot of where Steve's big combo potential lies is here in this stance. Keeping the mids going, we have back 2. Just a super evasive backswing. He reels back, will avoid a lot of moves, and just sets the enemy up for a big old wallop. Now the mid's where you get some pressure. So we have the back 1 chain, so back 1, 1, 2, 1. And obviously this whole string is not a natural combo, but you can keep the pressure going. Keep the enemy guessing, will they, won't they continue the string. If you just go for back 1, 1, which is a natural combo, it'll leave you -1 on hit, but back to your normal stance. If you go for the whole gusto, technically -10 punishable. However, the final hit is cancelable in the flicker, which leaves you much less negative. And then we have the down forward 1 series, this guy here. So from here, it's mids, and down forward 1, 1 is a natural combo for 26 damage. But we got the follow-ups here. So down forward 1, 1, 2. This is basically the will they, won't they part of the string here. So down forward 1, 1, 2 is very staggerable. Like you can delay that button pretty heavily. So by itself, if it gets blocked, it's -10, so jab punishable. But is it worth sticking out the button and getting caught by the 2? Because if you get caught by the 2 on counter hit, that'll guarantee its follow-up of 2, 1, and then big damage, splat out the enemy on the other side, right? So it's just a very staggerable string, just going for like the basics, 1, 1, 1, or down forward 1, 1. And occasionally tossing in the extra buttons and just seeing how they react and how willing are they to press buttons under continual pressure. All while you're sneaking in that occasional low, right? Just to keep them honest and all the mids following up. There's also a power low, down 2. Is a power low, 25 damage. That's a lot, right? But the thing is, it's almost 30 frame startup. So definitely very blockable. However, if you want to go for the gusto on this on counter hit, as you can see here, kind of semi-soft launch on the enemy. So the reward is there. Just keep in mind, -12, like you're going to eat a little punish. Not that bad, honestly, all things considered. But as a more seeable move, it's quote-unquote safer. Just go for the easy thing. But this is one of the few opportunities Steve gets to swing for the fences. So if you want to go for it and risk the block, down 2 from Peekaboo is actually not bad. And also 1, 2 is the throw as well. So unlike the flicker throw, he's actually boxing you, right? He's not just doing suplexes and stuff. It's a 1-2 break. It's always going to be a 1-2 break. So if they know the break, it's not too much of a surprise. But if you're just looking for, like, say, a counter hit throw or catch them to do some armor, this will be valuable enough. So basically, just quick lows, harass, and then a variety of mids to kind of keep them honest. This is one of the more pressure-focused stances. Now, let's talk Lionheart Stance. First, we're going to talk about just the stance itself. And then the next section will move into some of the inherent issues with it, and also some counterplay to the issues. But Lionheart by itself just does some fancy swaying, right? And if you enter the stance manually, because there's many ways, many moves that enter the stance for you, he moves backwards like very far, very fast. Like a backdash into Lionheart is a good way to make people just whiff buttons. And that leads directly into Lionheart 1, basically, if I want to go for like the whiff punish route. So Lionheart 1, Fair enough speed on the mid, 14 frame startup, 20 damage, and obviously heat engager, right? So that's kind of where the magic lies. So if you're using this specifically as like a whiff punish tech, that's usually what you're going to go for. Although if you want to believe in a move, it's a bit slower, not terribly slower, but slower nevertheless, right? Lionheart 2. This is a proper launch. So once again, Steve launches are not normal, but this will do the trick. If you know, backdash Lionheart, force a whiff, this could be a good whiff punish for you. Now the thing is, if you're using this raw, it does use your tornado right away. You're going to use this move a lot in combos, but generally at the end of a combo. If you start with this, you got to lose a tornado, which isn't the end of the world. You'll still get damage in. Just won't be the most damage, but you'll still get damage in, don't worry. And the last move of Lionheart is the defining move to me, 1+2. So 1+2 by itself, like it just, well, it looks like, you know, just a big old wallop. And sure it is, right, if it hits. But it is a true guard break. So if it connects, you can see like the glass break and everything, right? That means if you have a move, it's plus 12 on block. If you have a move that's 12 frames or faster, it's guaranteed they can't block. And for Steve, luckily enough, we got 2-2. So every time you have this and it gets blocked, 2-2 is straight up guaranteed. It's 19 damage. It's not like a lot of damage or nothing, but guaranteed damage is guaranteed damage. Like say in the scenario, they make them block up back 2 and puts you in Lionheart, right? And they're passive and you go for this, then just let all the guaranteed damage, right? So guard breaks usually are tied to heat mode or like some sort of weird gimmick. For Steve, like yes, you do have to be in Lionheart, but there's no other caveats. It doesn't have to be like you build a buff or you have to be in heat or whatever. You can just do it. So that is actually a very rare trait in this game. And despite some of the faults of Lionheart that we'll get into, this move is sort of jacked up and sort of really good, actually. So when the moment arises, go for it. Now, throughout the video, I've sort of alluded to there's a problem with Lionheart Stance, right? And even though I make these guys to try to stand the test of time as long as possible, I hope this section becomes obsolete and something gets patched. With that said, I'm going to tell you what the issue is, how to mitigate it, and one little piece of tech to help avoid it. So let's take something like down back 3-2. If this all worked the way you thought it would work, this would have been in the top 10 move section, because it's a low starter, a fast low, knocks him in the head, 20 damage, you're +7 on hit, and it's in the stance. And what the idea is here is when you're +7, okay, it's mix-up time. Am I going for that mid that we talked about, which is pretty decent, and therefore you have to stand block, right? And if I make you believe in the mid enough, that means while you're stand blocking, haha, here comes the guard break, eat some guaranteed damage, right? Not a lot, but some guaranteed damage. So herein lies the issue. So if you power crush as the defender, you're basically always going to win. Okay, here we go. 1, loses the power crush. 2, loses the power crush. Guard break, loses the power crush. So you have 3 options, all 3 lose the power crush. Now the thing about Lionheart is you can cancel into the basic stances. So say in this specific scenario against Azucena, right? I can do ducking and just kind of avoid the hit. Sure, okay. But everyone has different hitboxes, different angles. You know, not everyone's high, some are mid, all that. You have to know how the entire cast's power crush works. So for Azucena, if I do ducking, I can avoid it. And then I can go for like a 1-1-2 punish or something, right? Like, sure. But, I don't know. It just precludes that you have to know how the entire cast works. And say you do a ducking or something when you're +7, it's supposed to be your turn, and you do the ducking and they don't do the power crush and they do something else, right? And then you're going to get blown up that way. Like, it's a mix-up basically where the mix-up's in the defender's favor. You hit them and the threat of the power crush determines everything moving forward from that point. So much the same, say you do like up back 2, right? So up back 2, you're +3, and you know, that's way less frames, right? So you're definitely going to lose everything to the power crush, and you can still duck and all that kind of stuff if you have the read on it, but then they can do whatever. Once again, the enemy's power crush, even though you have advantage frames, determines everything that's going to happen. So say like your big heat attack. This also forces you to go in Lionheart, but +8. Now +8, is a bit more than the +7 you get from the down back 3-2, right? So at +8 specifically, then Lionheart, which you're forced to go to, Lionheart 1 will beat a Power Crush. So in this situation, you have one move that'll win, but, you know, hey, everything else, the 2, the 1+2, that will still lose to a Power Crush. So it's basically, I'm just informing you that anything that forces you against your will to go in the Lionheart will put you in an unfavorable situation against any Power Crush in the game. The guessing layer pyramid starts with their Power Crush and you work downwards. Now, if they don't know, then hey, abuse it. Go crazy, right? Go nuts if they don't know. But I'm telling you guys this so you know, and if someone wants to fight Steve, now you know as well. Once again, your generic options are there, depending on what the Power Crush may be. Backsway, ducking, all that kind of stuff, right? But getting a punish, it all just really depends character to character if that's the option. It's just a weird, messed up situation that it shouldn't work that way. Now, that said, there's some counterplay here. So this is some tech here where the way Tekken reads the buffer, so ducking, right? Ducking, if you plink ducking, like either kick, and immediately go from like forward and a kick button into both kick buttons, you will then go into Peekaboo. And so from Peekaboo, then we get some different options. So when you can cancel Lionheart, basically cancel into ducking and then immediately hit the other kick. And then you'll go directly into Peekaboo, right? And so from there, because Peekaboo has more options, it has a lot of options to go through when we do some different things. Like, hey, Peekaboo has lows, so you can just go for a quick low. You can't armor throw a low with a Power Crush, right? And you go for down 1 or down 2 or whatever. Peekaboo also has a throw. And in scenarios where it should be your turn, the throw will beat the Power Crush armor. So there we go. And keep in mind, this is against Azucena specifically, who has one of the fastest Power Crush attacks in the game. So anything slower than that's also guaranteed got. So you have counterplay against the sledgehammer option of the Power Crush when you go in the Lionheart. I know this is all weird knowledge check stuff, right? Like, most people won't even know this. I'm just telling you so you know, because this stuff drives me nuts. But now you know. Once again here, when you are going to cancel any Lionheart activation into ducking, and this will pretty much be the times like you're forced into it. You have no recourse. Like you're down back 3-2, or say your heat smash. You have to go into Lionheart. You do have no choice in the matter. You're going into it. Stuff like up back 2, you can cancel out of it. But anyways, once you're forced into Lionheart, just do ducking. And then from ducking, just while you're holding the one kick, just hit the other kick and try to do it as fast as possible. And you'll cancel the first frame of ducking into Peekaboo. And when done correctly, then you'll have all the Peekaboo options. The timing's a little strict. This is back in the Street Fighter days what we would call plinking. You're basically hitting the one button and the other button as fast as possible to get your input buffer to look like this, where you see one button, then one frame later you see the two buttons. So on the first frame, it's ducking. The second frame, it becomes Peekaboo. I'm very sorry if I bored you with all this technical jargon. This is to beat edge case scenarios, but I feel like Steve down back 3-2 should be one of his best moves. But because of the reverse guessing game starting with Power Crush, I don't feel it is one of his best moves. And once again, if they don't know, you can just check it once. If they don't know to hit Power Crush right away, go crazy. Then all of a sudden, yes, down back 3-2 becomes an amazing move because you're forcing to guess mid or guard break all the time, right? But if you didn't know, now you know. There's the play, there's the counterplay, and there's the counterplay to the counterplay. That's the section. Now, let's talk Steve and combos. As mentioned so many times in this video, Steve's and launchers is very different than everyone else, right? But I want to give you an example like what a rough, quote-unquote, normal combo would look like. Steve, more than the rest of the cast, is all about like counter hits and like weird little mini combos. Just the gigantic launcher into the big home run swing. You can still do it, but it's not as prevalent as the rest of the cast. So for a basic idea of like a launch, I'll give you just like up 4-2. This is somewhat analogous to a hop kick, I suppose. As he's airborne, it's 22 frames, so it's a little slower, I guess. But you got to take what you can get with Steve, right? And then after I give you what like kind of basic combo structure looks like and some example wall stuff, we'll go to the next combo section. We're going to rapid fire a bunch of combos for you. So for Steve, we'll use our up 4-2 example here. Kind of gives like a generic bounce launch effect. What do we want to aim for after this and many similar styles of combos? So there we go. 70 plus damage is very respectable, right? Like, Steve might struggle a bit on the launches, but like he still gets the damage when it counts. So one thing to note, it's pretty straightforward till the end. After we get our first Lionheart Tornado after 422, what we're doing is this. So after the launch here, you saw me go for sidestep ducking left, specifically the ducking stance left. And then going for ducking left 1-2, which will force us into Lionheart Stance, and then Lionheart 2, right? You can also just go back 1-2, and I'll also go into Lionheart Stance and do the same ender. The only difference is, you saw right there, the damage. Technically, you get 1 more point of damage if you do the ducking left into 1-2 versus back 1-2 in the same ender, right? So if you want to do the extra work, go for it. It's 1 more damage. But if you don't want to do the extra work, it's only 1 more damage, right? If you just want to be more optimal, quote unquote, that's kind of the way we want to go for it. And some of the bigger launchers like down forward, full crouch, down forward 2, since it has a higher launch, you can add a little bit extra mustard on it by doing the same basic combo, but adding a up back 2 to the beginning of it. So there we go, almost 80 damage. That's pretty respectable, I would say. And now, so this is, once again, launchers are rarer for Steve, but let me show you an example if you get closer to the wall. So be it off a launch, or if you get an extended counter hit combo, like say off back 1, which we've shown an example of earlier in the video, you want to be aiming for something roughly like this. Do your usual B&B stuff, and once we start working them to the corner, usually after the tornado, they're going to be near the corner, right? So what are we aiming for at this point? The answer is both simple and complicated, unfortunately. So just get them on the wall, 2-1. Okay, that part's the easy part, right? 2-1. And then from 2-1, you're going to want to flicker cancel 2-1, because it puts you a better stated frame advantage. And then from 2-1 flicker cancel, you want to cancel your flicker cancel into ducking cancel. I know your eyes are going cross-eyed right now, I'm sorry, right? But we're basically doing a double stance cancel, all for the ease of use of getting the machine gun blow. Because normally if you hit 2-1 and hit forward, you go into Peekaboo, which is not what we want. So we have to go into flicker to cancel, getting in the Peekaboo, then going to ducking, and then we get something like this. And then we start getting more optimal damage enders. So depending on how you might get a little bit more, a little bit less, but basically, because machine gun blow off ducking just does so many hits, regardless of the scaling, you're going to get a good amount of damage in, right? So it's a little complex. 2-1, flicker cancel, then cancel flicker into ducking. I know. If you want something a little bit easier, after 2-1, just hold back for flicker anyways. And then just while you're holding back, hit kick to go into your backsway, and then do backsway 1. And backsway 1 will hit them in that sweet spot on the ground where you'll only get 50% scaling, so much more damage off the single hit. And you won't do as much damage as ducking machine gun blow, but you won't do much less either. And it's a lot easier on like the old mental stack. So whatever's easier for you, although obviously I think machine gun blow just looks cooler on top of doing more damage. But that's the raw anatomy of a basic combo, and also what you might be aiming for once you're at the wall. So now let me give you some rapid fire just combo examples for Steve. And that's Steve. Steve is one of the more complex characters in the game, but hopefully this video has given you a hang on just what he's capable of and how he works. Once again, Steve, he just plays such a different game than everyone else, right? So the amount of time and effort you can learn Steve, honestly, you could probably learn 2 characters entirely. He's just that much more in-depth than the rest of the cast, but he's very rewarding in his own way. Obviously, the visual flair, like all the various things he can do, nobody else can really do the same thing Steve can do, and especially with the style and panache that he does it with. So that said, I hope this video has been a good window into the character, the starter guide to help you get started with Steve. And other than that, well, I guess we're at the end of the video now. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Tekken.